You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the columnist Carol Malone and the editor of the Courier in Dundee, David Clegg. They'll be with us from now right up until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Guardian reports that 4 Conservative ministers have called on Rishi Sunak to break the deadlock in the dispute with the Royal College of Nursing by entering negotiations over pay. The Metro pictures nurses on a picket line in Liverpool who, despite being on strike, went to the aid of a man who'd collapsed nearby. The Express also leads with nurses telling Britain to sit down and sort this out. The Eye hears that 999 services in all 10 of England's ambulance trusts are being placed under extreme pressure, that they're facing an operational crisis. The Telegraph says the NHS is on high alert as hospital admissions for the flu have jumped more than 40% in a week. The Financial Times has word of the Bank of England and the European Central Bank's decision to raise their respective interest rates by half a percentage point. David's paper, The Courier, speaks to a pharmacist in Fife who describes the demand for Strep A antibiotics as chaos. The Star accuses Prince Harry of insisting he wants privacy, whilst also divulging contentious exchanges with his father and brother in the latest chapter of his Netflix docuseries. Indeed, the Mail describes the Prince and Princess of Wales's appearance at a carol concert tonight as dignity in the face of treachery. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Carol Malone and David Clegg. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the Star, not something we do very often, but we will tonight. Dad told whoppers and my scary brother screamed at me. Direct quotes from Prince Harry in this latest installation of his Netflix docuseries. What do you make of that, Carol?
Well, they sound like a couple of kids, you know. It's true. There was, the stuff I had to get up. The reason I'm so tired now is I had to get up at the crack of dawn today to watch these two in the latest 3 hours of, whining and moaning and woe is me. And this one was actually kind of worse in that sense than last week. But they came out with, there was a couple of good news lines, and that's what the Star have just mentioned. But basically, Meghan and Harry are saying that the rest of the royals were jealous of them, which is why they were edged out of the royal family, which is absolutely tosh. I mean, they've got a very inflated idea of their own popularity. Harry was saying that Meghan was stealing the limelight, which is why some of the senior royals turned against her. Harry's saying Will's bullied me like a kid. This is a guy who fought in Afghanistan, for goodness sake, and he's saying his brother losing his temper with him in a meeting terrified him. I mean, Harry particularly sounds like a kid. And today it saddened me a bit because he has now totally ended any chance of a relationship ever again with his brother. Wills will never talk to him again after this. He has berated him yet again in the eyes of the world. He's called his father a liar in the eyes of the world. And the headline on the Mail today is saying that, dignity in the face of treachery when the royal family went to the annual carol service at Westminster Abbey. And yes, they are very dignified, but I'm not sure that they shouldn't say something now. I think they should. They can't keep on taking hits like that and not respond. I know they're probably thinking, because the American press are now turning against them, the American press are now questioning what they say, because everything they say, Gillian, is entirely uncorroborated. Everything Harry said about William, about the screaming match in this meeting, is uncorroborated. There's no proof that it ever took place. And so now...
I was just going to say, let's bring David in, because I'm interested in that point that Carol raises, that she believes the royal family should now speak up. Are you of that view as well? Should they respond?
I think the dignified silence actually has worked for them so far. Unlike Carol, I got up at the normal time this morning, so I haven't seen the latest episodes yet. But it seems that while I think it's very unedifying, that it's a deeply sad spectacle, and that Harry and Meghan's decision to promote it this way and to attack the family so publicly is regrettable. I don't think there's been anything. There's been no real explosive bombshell there. It feels like it hasn't been as dramatic or as damaging as the palace perhaps feared or suspected it would be. So I think the fact that they have maintained a dignified silence throughout it has actually worked quite well in their favour. And I'm not sure there's anything in particular that's came to light that they need to respond to. It's not like an accusation of a particular incident of racism or some of the other things we've heard in the past. I don't think there was anything at quite that category. So I think the Star actually, which we started with there, sums it up pretty well, because I think that kind of mocking attitude towards it is actually the best way to go about it. It is quite clear, and Prince Harry makes no secret of the fact that he loathes the British press. But I think looking across the front pages of tomorrow's papers, it's quite clear that the feeling's mutual.
Yeah. Just very quickly, Carol, because I want to move on, but the whoppers that the Star alludes to, was there any detail what these alleged lies were?
Well, I mean, basically saying that the royal family planted stories about them in the press. Well, of course, as the press all knows, Meghan and Harry did that. But can I say one thing? I think this is the one thing I looked at her today and I thought, what a squandered, wasted opportunity. She could have been fantastic for the royal family. It did need an injection of life. It did need an injection of modern day perspective. She could have provided that. And in the first 6 months, she absolutely did. And then it was squandered on the altar of their own vanity. And I just think that is such a waste. It's such a missed opportunity.
Meanwhile, the Mail, they think that Prince William and Kate, the Princess and Prince of Wales, that they're dignified in the face of what they're describing as treachery. Is that a word that you might use to describe it, David?
I think treachery is a good tabloid word. It feels a bit strong. Certainly, I think, given that this is his brother that they're talking about.
I think Carol might disagree, but anyway. Carry on, David.
Given it is his brother that they're talking about here, it certainly is a betrayal. I think it certainly doesn't. It isn't something that is comfortable to witness. Really, it's a deeply uncomfortable spectacle. I think. I'm not sure if I would take it to the level of treachery, though.
When you slate your own father and your own brother, you call your dad a liar, you call your whole family racist, you don't think that's treacherous? My God, what would he have to do for it to be treacherous for you, David?
Carol, I'm sure worse goes on in ordinary families, and they manage to patch things up.
It doesn't get put on a world stage.
No, that's the only difference. That's the only difference. But they're no different to any other family, to be honest. Let's have a look at The Guardian. We'll move on to politics now. And the nurses' strike that took place today, the historic strike that took place first time in their history. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, is being urged to just basically sit down and sort this out.
Yes, and I think from a Scottish perspective, it's quite interesting, actually, because this strike's not happening in Scotland, because the Scottish government did sit down with the Royal College of Nurses and they've came to an agreement, which I think was about an average of 7.5% pay rise. What The Guardian is reporting tomorrow and what we're seeing in some of the other papers as well is I think actually Rishi Sunak is under a lot of pressure here. I think particularly because it's nurses. You notice even the Express, which is a paper that you would imagine would be hostile towards strikes and strikers. That is pretty supportive of the nurses, really, as far as the Daily Express front page goes. And what they're saying, what The Guardian is saying, is that there's concern from amongst the Conservative Party about how this is playing out publicly, and they're asking the Prime Minister to, take it into his personal in tray and get to grips with it. They continue to say that this has been the Pay Review Board have made this decision, looked at it, and that their hands are tied on that. It feels like the tide is moving on that, and it's not really a position that's going to be sustainable in the long term, especially if we do have this winter crisis in the NHS. Everyone is very stretched. I think there's a great deal of sympathy for nurses. They're not well paid. And I think this is a strike that the government would be very keen to resolve if they could.
Well, the Royal College of Nursing has threatened to stage strikes for months to come if ministers don't start to negotiate a better deal. But as you say, that sympathy does appear to be there for the nurses. And when you look at the story on the front of the Metro, with nurses abandoning their placards to help somebody who was in distress, who collapsed ill in Bristol, it shows that they really are in their profession to help people. Carol.
I mean, Gillian, I would expect anyone to go to the aid of someone who'd collapsed in the street. It wouldn't have to be a nurse, it would be anyone. I don't think they're heroes for that. But I mean, I think their demand for 19% is crazy. It's never going to happen. The country can't afford that. And you just said there that they're poorly paid. The average salary for a nurse is 32 grand, plus increments, plus pensions, plus waiting allowances in London. And for an experienced nurse, it's 50 odd grand. This is not great, but it's not bad. So, and I think, we keep on talking about nurses. Yes, they do a fantastic job. And we talk about the pandemic, them being heroes in the pandemic. The pandemic threw up lots of heroes: supermarket workers, dustbin workers, people who went to work every single day and who get paid a lot less than 32 grand a year. So I think a Rubicon was crossed today. I think it's bad that people in the emergency services, people whose jobs it is to save lives, are going on strike. Not only are they going on strike, they're threatening this for months to come. The Royal College of Nursing today refused to guarantee cancer care. So this is a shocking state of affairs. And that's not just going to be for one day, because they're saying this could be for months to come. Let's not forget the nurses have had a 4.5% pay rise. They were given what the pay review body said they should have.
Yes, so but just to end on that point, former head of the PRB, Jerry Cope, he said the body should consider revisiting its original finding, as it may be a possibility for a solution for this apparently intractable problem. That things have changed and they should look again.
The fact it's being fixed in Scotland suggests it's not intractable. It just requires the political will to fix it.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview, still with me, Karen Malone and David Clegg. Let us have a look at the Telegraph. And this worrying story is if the NHS hasn't got enough to worry about. Hospital admissions have jumped 40% in a week for flu. There is an outbreak, which could be the worst in years, David.
Yes, it is. It's quite a concerning story on the front page. It's they think it could pass the peak of the 2017-2018 outbreak, which is one of the worst flu years of the past 20 years, during which nearly 30,000 people died. And they say flu cases are so high they have now overtaken COVID admissions for the first time since the start of the pandemic. So I think, given the context of what we've been talking about with the nurses' strike, there is a great deal of pressure on the healthcare system in general at the minute. We know that we still haven't recovered from the damage done during the COVID pandemic and that backlog. We've seen situations in Scotland with some of the worst waiting times on record, and there's that pressure across the UK. So a serious flu crisis like that feels like it could be a very serious problem in the weeks ahead. So I think people will be watching that very carefully and with a certain sense of foreboding, actually.
Indeed. To your paper, David, the Courier, but we'll get Carol to kick off. And this is a pharmacist in Fife describing it as chaos, the lack of antibiotics to treat strep A.
I'm not really the one to talk about this. It's David's paper. However, I have read the story. And yeah, what I don't understand is how we can have a shortage of antibiotics in this country. These are basic drugs. How can we have a shortage of something that should be so easy to get hold of and can cure strep A very quickly? Kids are dying with this, and all they need is a very simple antibiotic. Why isn't it there?
David, jump in with 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is a very brave pharmacist. She saw Rishi Sunak on the television saying there was no shortage, and she has put her head above the parapet and told us there's no penicillin. The second antibiotic you would normally take at that stage would be amoxicillin. We've got no amoxicillin either. The case numbers are very high in Scotland. There's a great deal of concern, and I think the phone calls from frantic parents were ringing around pharmacies trying to find penicillin for their sick child. It's a nightmare situation, and just leads to that sense that the health service is creaking at the moment.